And welcome everybody. It's good to meet you all again for this week's Practice as Research seminar. I'm really excited, as always, to have an international audience. It's always exciting to meet people from other countries. And today we have got with us Dr. Elena Tragou, who is going to be talking about ethics research practice, saying two's a company, but three's a crowd. And I'm really excited to have Elena here. Just to say, Dr. Elena Tragou is a systemic psychologist-psychotherapist, researcher, educator, and writer. She's published 2 books on clinical assessment. She's also published a good number of research articles, and she's been participating in European and international conferences, presenting her work on systemic research and therapy, human communication, and supervision and therapy. And it's actually as part of one of those conferences where Elena and I met for the first time. We've just said, this is probably the advantage in some ways of the pandemic having forced us all to learn to work in different ways, because we're not quite sure whether Ellen and I would have connected otherwise because of our differences in disciplines. Just to finish off, Elena is a clinical member of APA and AMFT. She's registered as MST and a member of LSIT as well. Please do check out Elena's work, and I'll make available some links for you later on as well. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Elena, please do take command of the screens.
Okay.
I'm going to mute myself so that there is no feedback and no silly background noises from me, but I look forward to your presentation and then obviously opening up the discussion later on.
Okay, great. How exciting to be here and seeing all these familiar and familiar to be faces. It's really exciting for me to be part of this on this first endeavor in presenting myself and my work in this community, in this network. I'm really excited about Umberto and Pietro joining in, because these are the 2 people who inspired me with their book on ethics and aesthetics. So I send them out the invitation to participate, and I know how busy they are with their schedules and everything. So it's really, really exciting for me to see them here today. Let me, oops, can you see the screen? No.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
I need to press share screen again. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Hold on. I did something.
It's okay.
So, portion of the screen.
That's right. Yes. And then just click share. That's it. It's coming up now. You need to click on the PowerPoint presentation. At the moment, we've got the Zoom thing.
Yeah.
You're already in the Zoom room, so it's fine. That's it. And now you open the PowerPoint presentation at the bottom of your screen. There we go. That's it. Got it now. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So let me in turn welcome you to this research seminar series on ethical issues for the practice as a research network. I am, as Nicole said, I'm a systemic psychologist and psychotherapist. I reside and work in Athens, Greece. And my topic for today, hoping to be fruitful for the conversation that will follow, is on ethics, research, and practice. 2 is company, 3 is a crowd. Now, when I first started thinking about the topic and about how what it means to me and how I could present it, the question of my systemic background and these 3 words, ethics, research, and practice, and how all of them interconnected, kept popping up in my head. So as a way to present my epistemology and my way of thinking, I thought it would be a welcoming or a jumping off point to start with the abstract, let's say, sort of speak, of this presentation. So the first question is, How can we understand ethics, research, and practice from a systemic point of view, if we can? And how does aesthetics clarify, if it does, the intertwining relationship of the three? Barbera and colleagues, the ones that are two of them are joining us right now in their book, talk about a tour de force that has been unfolding during the last 4 decades, where professionals of mental health, researchers, and educators have been opening up the dialogue on ethics, practice, and research from an epistemic and ontological point of view. And I couldn't agree more on that. So it seems that unless we contextualize the meaning of these ideas in a systemic epistemology, we as professionals will be losing the great significance of their connections by focusing on the divided Cartesian or Newtonian way of understanding them. So my hope after this presentation is that not only that the tour goes on, but that we will have a chance among each other to talk about our epistemologies and our ideas on this matter. So let me start with another question of how can we connect, or how can we hold all these concepts at the same time? And it seems as if systemic epistemology is a good starting point to start looking for connections, because systemic epistemology, the systemic thinking, allows us to look at contextualized, circular context and interrelationships. So, for example, if we were to take the word ethics and look at different dictionaries, books, articles, encyclopedias, whatever have you, in order to look for a definition of it, then I think very easily we would come up with the definition that ethics refers to ethical codes that are sort of act as guidelines for what therapists and researchers can and cannot do. However, if we were to look at the history of ethics or the history of ethical codes, then we will come to a different conclusion, saying that they are ambiguous by design, that the ethical codes are ambiguous by design, meaning that they're not static and they're formed inside of a context. Now, that context could be any context: social context, political context, economical context, cultural context. So if we were, for instance, to look at different examples of research experiments or therapeutic experiments, if we were to talk about Albert case, or the Munster effect, or Milgram's experiment, or the bystander effect, or even the Stanford effect, then we will have a different conversation if we were living at those times, because these experiments were considered to be ethical, were considered to be acts of research and therapy, because at that time, within that context, they made sense. However, if we were to transform the idea of research or practice or ethics and how these experiments were conducted nowadays, then we would be drawing different conclusions, because the context will be different, which again makes us think, well, how ethical are ethics? How ethical or unethical ethics are, or how guiding or guided the guidelines are. What does it mean? In 1970s, we all know of the Bellman Report, which was done exactly to protect people from human research, because nowadays we need to confirm that we have consent, we have the do no harm, and we have confidentiality or in check, things that are considered to be ethical, that are considered to be ground rules for research and practice, which were not given in previous times, for example, in those 5 experiments that I just showed you. So Barbera and colleagues went as far as saying that practice as a word has the same ambiguity as ethics. So practice, they propose, is a word which produces a differentiation between meaning and sense, concept and expression, ethic and aesthetic. As a concept, they say, practice has to do with ethics, but as an expression, it deals with living experience. And that comes from the Greek word, imagine that, aesthesis, which means sensory, perceptual, and corporeal experience. So both ethics and research and practice are multidimensional concepts because they enclose not just concepts and meanings, but also the living experiences that we have as humans have of these meanings. So unless we're able to hold that multidimensionality all at the same time, all we'll be doing is having cause and effect conversations among each other regarding research, ethics, and practice, and sort of follow the so-called grandmother cell theory. And although I have nothing against grandmothers, actually I had a wonderful relationship with my grandmother, and they're wonderful human beings. If we keep on enclosing the conversation on ethics, practice, and research in linear thinking, then we'll be losing a lot of their meaning and their context that they are embedded in. And that's because we live by engaging, relating, and making sense of our experience. Ethics, research, and therapy are indeed epistemological and ontological entities because they emphasize or they highlight how we live, we understand, and engage with the world. Now, systemically speaking, we as researchers and practitioners, in order to hold this multidimensionality, need to move in between different territories of knowledge and action. And that is, we need, or let's say we have to work on being able to hold on different, a plethora of information from different sciences. That is, for example, biology, neurology, neurobiology, which is very much in fashion now, mathematics, quantum physics, imagine that, sociology, ethology, social anthropology, psychiatry, and of course, the wonderful world of the arts. And that because the reality is that life is a connection between all these subjects. And in order to understand ethics, practice, and research, we need to have our ears open and our eyes open in the plethora of information that we get from different sources of information. Gunter Schipek, I apologize if I don't pronounce the last name correctly, is a German researcher who went so far as to say, to define systemic research as a theoretical and methodological approach that measures, analyzes, and models the structures and functioning of complex dynamic systems at a biological, mental, and social level. And I know it sounds very complex, and I'm sure it is, but it speaks to the heart of the matter, which is that people, as living systems, living beings, are biopsychosocial agents because we do influence and are being influenced by internal and external environments. So as long as we hold these concepts divided, the bio, psycho, social, and ethics, practice, and research, as long as we hold these concepts divided, then we will be having trouble capturing their essence. And the reason is because humans, we are part of ecosystems. A major paradigm shift, as we all know, came with the concept of second-order cybernetics. Nora Bateson, in one of her latest presentations on the matter on cybernetics a few days ago, gave a very simple definition about that by saying that it's a complex system. A second-order cybernetics answers to how a complex system is observing another complex system. So if we were to note or to pay attention to that sentence, the verb that actually created that paradigm shift was in research and ethics and therapy is the verb observe. Because at the time, what second order cybernetics did is that it put the researcher, the therapist, the people who were interested in ethics, it put the person, the scientist, in the middle of the context as being part of that context, the context that he or she is studying, researching, or having a conversation on ethics. So there is no passive observation. And by being very dynamic and energetic in our observation, in the observation of us being complex systems, observing other complex systems, being another human being in a research environment, or a client in a therapeutic situation, or another living organism, we not only have the ability to observe, but to act on reflection, to have an understanding of what it is that we do and how our actions and our way we see things reflect back on ourselves by the mere action of observation and being part of that environment. So again, Barbera went as far as saying that we need that ongoing reflecting search for the multiple senses of reality. In 1984, Maturana and Varela, famous biologists and researchers as well, again highlighted the fact that we are part of an ecological thinking system, and we are able to reflect upon our actions and their consequences and ourselves, and how all of that are seen and lived within an embedded context. So if I venture at this point to invite you to pretend that we're back in 1963 in New York at the New York Zoo at Bronx, where at the time the zoo was advertising, I'm sure that you all know the picture, it was advertising the fact that they had captured and caged the most dangerous animal in the world. So they were inviting people to visit the zoo and have a parade in order to have a look at the most dangerous animal in the world. And what they had done was that they had created a room where there was a mirror, and whoever was passing by was able to look on himself. I mean, they were able to reflect, see their reflection, his or her reflection, and seeing that reflection under the inscription, the most dangerous animal in the world. As far as the artistic side goes, Escher, again, a very well-known image maker of the 20th century, has done wonderful works of art with reflections. They use the use of reflection. For example, in this slide, you can look at the reflecting hands. So again, see that as an invitation of how it shifts our thinking and our perceiving when we can work with our reflection. So the one hand works and relates to the other hand while being in the same sort of circuit, in the same circular context. In the psychotherapeutic world, William James, an old fellow, a psychoanalyst and researcher, was actually the first or among the first psychotherapists and researchers who supported the method of reflection as a research tool. And that was back in the 19th century. But it was quickly put aside as a research tool because it created a long battle among professionals over its accountability. Now, the reason was that it showed the difference between what therapists or researchers actually thought they were doing versus what they actually were doing. So instead of looking back and re-examining their hypothesis, these professionals, I mean us, professionals started accusing each other over the methodology they used, over how, for example, they used reflection. So they did not concentrate on what it meant to have reflection as a research tool. And there it went. I mean, the reflection as a research tool went down the drain. But it was brought back in life, so to speak, again by Maturana and Varela, by again highlighting that living systems are primary mindful systems, and the process of living is a process of cognition. It's a process of relating. Katchen, a wonderful Italian philosopher and researcher and therapist, spoke about the science of becoming. Now imagine that. Imagine having human sciences being defined as sciences of becoming. And imagine the word becoming as a word or as a verb that allows us to hold on to ambiguity, to what's unusual, to what's different, to what's different that makes a difference. So imagine how different research, therapy, or a conversation about ethics, for example, would be if we were to stay, as Barbera and colleagues suggested, at the immanent plane where theory and practice meet and engage in a stochastic process where the final outcome is not known. And imagine how different research and therapy would be if we were to hold on to the systemic premise that sciences should continually attempt to falsify their own hypotheses. In other words, again, as Katchen suggested, we should never fall in love with our hypothesis, being researchers, therapists, or whatever have you in human sciences, and in a way be always part of an indefinite triangulation between data, clients, ourselves, the world, the context. Because by being part of that indefinite triangulation, we have a living experience, what it means to be part of a synergetic system. And that means that we have the sort of ability to look at and perceive the patterns that connect, again, by Kinney in his book, Aesthetics of Change. And by doing that, we're able to sort out the repeated interrelationships among all members of an ecosystem that would enable us to more fully comprehend the more encompassing recursive patterns connecting every living being. But how complex can complexity go? How high does the complexity go? Well, actually, for us systemic speaking, systemic thinkers, the sky's the limit. But to talk pragmatics as well, we need to lower the levels of complexity and, for example, look at how useful linear thinking is and how useful at times cause and effect is. Because when we start working or when we start paying attention or being interested in certain things, that we need to start working at a low level of complexity. And that is cause and effect. That is linear thinking. But even though we're doing that, Bateson suggests it's better to work on that level. Yes, that's fine. But we always need to go back to the larger system and see how the low level of complexity relates and makes sense. It becomes meaningful at a larger level of complexity, because people are or are not just what a conclusion says they are. So, and that's because a part is an abstraction of a unifying whole. A part of something, a part of a research, part of therapy, part of ethics, for example, does not give us answers if we were to look at that, to connect that part with the unifying whole. We need to make a connection between that part and the unifying whole in order to make sense of our research and therapy. And again, that's because human beings exist in ecological relations, which are circular, recursive, homeodynamic, and cybernetic. What we have to let go or be more skeptical of, again, is how we use linear thinking, and to avoid using the concept of input-output in order to explain living systems. So it is important to understand and to have in mind how we make distinctions. How do we decide to make a distinction between ethical or unethical, researchable or non-researchable, therapeutical or non-therapeutical? Because through our reflecting actions, we produce meaningful relational contexts. And that is being able to look at and perceive circular context, which is life. We are responsible for doing that. We are responsible of what we do. We are responsible of how we do things, because responsibility is not individually centered. It's not individually based. It is not a tautology, but it becomes meaningful within human living contexts. In a way, it's what Sheila McNamee suggests by looking at or talking about communal engagement. It's what Britt Krause Inga talks about when she talks about relational research and the continuous search for perspectives, because that's how we can do transforming and be part of transforming relational practices. What is labeled as truth or fact, ethical or unethical, researchable or non-researchable, therapeutical or non-therapeutical, enjoys that status only by virtue of communal engagement, because we live in a complex world, and the best our research can do is provide access to that diversity and complexity. Orienting ourselves towards seeing patterns that connect leads us to experiencing that living experience, the sense of aesthetics in our ecosystem. And that means creating a shift in our epistemology and ontology, where we move from low levels of complexity to higher levels of complexity, from cause and effect to a more encompassing systemic understanding of what it means to be part of an ecosystem. Ubuntu is actually a word by ancient African tribes, and it means that I am what I am because of what we all are. And by getting to the conclusion of my presentation, let me just give you a very personal note from our daily activity and life by showing you a picture of my dog and the path that we usually take. So this is Cooper. Cooper is a rescued hunting dog, and he's about 5 years old now. So because of his energy, as you can imagine, every day we have this ritual where we take this road that's in the mountain, and I let him free, and he walks around and sniffs around and chases birds and whatever, and has fun. So the line of stones that you're seeing was actually were put there to let the walkers know that that's the main road, and that has been there for many, 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 many years. what happened was that a few months ago, it rained so bad, cats and dogs, literally, that the main road caved in. So it wasn't as easy to walk on as it was before. And that was, at that time, was the, when I perceived that there was another side, another path next to the main road that would make my life easier and I could walk on. And so I mean, for me, it was just amazing when I was walking on that path, on that road, by saying, oh my God, it's as if the caving in allowed the side path to appear as the main road. And to me, that's sort of like a metaphor by saying that allowing the shift, allowing change to happen is how we can make change happen. So again, another picture of the dog. And just getting back to the title of this presentation, yes, 2 is a company, 3 is a crowd, but as they say, the more the merrier, because that's how we can all have a party. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elena. Thank you. I can see a round of applause. We can't hear it, obviously, but okay. Thank you very, very much. Just to say, it's really, really exciting to hear you talk about your work and about what you're saying there. I do have questions, but at the same time, I don't want to necessarily hog the conversation. So anybody who, if you have any questions or comments, perhaps, or you want to pitch into the conversation, please make yourself known to me. I do keep an eye on the chat box, and I keep an eye on any raised hands, virtually or really. So, you know, just let me know if there's anything that you would like to add in and to come in for. To kind of kick us off with the discussion, if you like, I'm really excited about what you're saying about the shift and the changes, and about looking at things from a more systemic sort of viewpoint. I'm just kind of wondering, you know, how popular is that opinion in your field, and how popular are you because of that opinion in that field? You know, is there, what does it actually mean as a researcher working on that cusp of, you know, like you said, ethics, research and practice? What does it mean in real life? Is there a danger of actually going down that route?
Well, it gets lonely at times, the truth is, but I honestly, and deep down, I mean, from my heart, believe that it's a more enriching route. So yes, it could become complex in research or in therapy, and that's why I believe that doing the cause and effect thinking, or doing the cause and effect research, is very credible and rigorous as well. But we just need to have, or at least I try to have, that you know, what I'm doing is just part of something, and I'm trying to have in my head and at times outside of my head as well, in therapy and research, the fact that I need to sort of combine the outcome with something that's bigger than just the outcome per se. So I wouldn't say that it's dangerous. I would say that it needs more work, or at least more sharing of ideas.
Thank you. Can I just ask you to stop sharing your screen so that we can see you a little bit more as well? That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I do have some other questions, but I'm just wondering if there are any questions from the room, or comments at this stage. Pietro, I'm going to unmute you. Hang on. You need to unmute yourself first. Ask unmute. There we go. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the hospitality, and thank you for your fantastic, beautiful intervention, Elena. Very, very
Thank
nice.
you.
When you were talking about, I was connecting with what I was explaining to my student just before of this. And one of them is working on a paper in which he tries to explain the chapter of Ingeborg Krause when she's talking about striate and smooth space, which is a distinction that do Deleuze and Guattari in their writing. No? And I started to think that it has to do with ethics in this sense. When I met once, I met many times, once I met Umberto Maturana, and I asked him, what do you mean when you talk about structural drift? I don't understand. Can you explain to me? And he gave a good explanation, a very nice explanation that was, imagine you are in a smooth space like a sea, and you are in your tiny boat, but you don't have any kind of way to move from this, no, because you lost your I don't remember what the name of the remi. And so, but you have a city, so I kind of think that you can give an explanation to the safety on the ground, and you have the kind of a bussola, we call it.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And, you give to them by the CB your position here and now, and they launch a boat for safety. But when the boat gets the point, you are not there. So this is ethic.
Yes, wonderful.
Something like a suspension.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Petra, for saying it.
Thank you. To you.
I think Umberto is trying to connect with us. Yeah, there we
Hello,
go. Thank
everybody.
you.
I saw you are not a member of EFTA.
Right, we met,
We'll talk about it.
Yes.
As president of EFTA, I will contact you anyhow.
Right.
No, thank you very much, Elena. Thank you very much. For you to explain, to tell us some research that you did, connecting ethics and research and practice. Because I really think that the practice-based research will be the research of the future. And I really think that, we are talking about me, I'm not so familiar with so many researchers.
Oops.
Invited in 1990 to talk about, in Paris, to talk about ethics and second order cybernetics. He started saying this phrase, telling this story. He said, when I talk about this, very worried, because it's very easy to talk about second order cybernetics, but it's very, very difficult to talk about ethics. So that will be the next conference I will do, and I'm looking forward. In the meanwhile, I would like to have some examples of this practice-based research, please. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Elena, do you want to answer that question? Have you got any examples of any practice-based research from your own work?
Well, the research that I think is close to that, to contextualizing the three is the research that I've been doing for the last years on how on self-reflections. So what it means to the self of therapist, or how it influences or is getting influenced or influences the therapeutic diet. And actually that was part of the presentations that I did, and I think that's how we met. The two of us met at the Conference on Qualitative Research, where I presented how that part of being a reflective living system. So I talked about what it meant for me to be part of the therapeutic system and being aware of that, and actually on plus the difficulty that we had during the COVID years with the doing therapy and research online. And so another research that I'm still working on, because these are work in progress as well, is what I presented in September in EFTA, where I met Umberta, and she talked to me about the book that was just released. So I talked about, again, the online therapy and how we kept track of the conversations that we had, and how we kept track of the conversations of therapy being a living experience. So how we kept track of our, for example, bodily reactions, both myself and the clients, how we kept track of our emotions, our ideas, and how we spend some time after sessions were over to talk about that and connect our experiences, sort of engage how we engaged in that synergetic system. So I don't know if that answers Umberta's curiosity, or question at this point, but that's the most relevant that I have on that aspect.
Thank you very much, Elena, and I can see a thumbs up. So it's obviously been a very, very good answer as well. Thank you very much. As there are no other questions at this stage, I'm going to pitch in with another one, and it's kind of linking to what Umberta was saying as well, because Umberta was saying she thinks that the kind of practice-based research is the research of the future. And it's really interesting because it basically taps into this idea of the value of professional knowledge. And now you kind of, Elena, in your presentation, you were talking about sort of the historical development of ethics, and, you know, how ethics is contextualized, and how what was appropriate 20 years ago or 40 years ago would now be, you know, wholly inappropriate. So there is that element. But I'm also kind of wondering, in that idea that Umberta was raising, you know, the professional knowledge in that triangle, you know, in that triangle that you've raised, how has the perception of professional knowledge developed? Do you have any ideas in terms of what you know, how this may shift again, those kind of multi-dimensionalities that you're talking about?
Right. Well, as I was preparing for that presentation, and I was reading books left and right, it became apparent that the knowledge of multidimensionality is not new. It's something that was in the minds of of researchers and therapists, and very well-known ones, actually. For example, Piaget, the French psychologist, or even William James, as I said in my presentation, Bateson from an anthropological point of view. So it's not something that's new. What is different now is that we allow ourselves to incorporate it in our research and theory and practice. So it has been around. It's just that I believe that psychology was so much fond of being rigorous and accountable through the medical system, or through the medical way of doing research, that somehow thought that using or being in the stream of multidimensionality or reflecting or being in the stream of participant observation, that somehow would deminimize the scientific outlook that wanted to have. Because from the very birth of psychology and philosophy are much more at hand than is with medicine. I mean, medicine and clinical experiments were very much more connected than medicine or clinical experiments and psychology is. So I don't think that it's something new. It has been there, but I think what has shifted is that we are allowing ourselves now to be more curious about that. We are opening, for example, a space or a window to invite that new outlook in our work as therapists and researchers.
But can I just ask though, isn't it in a way sort of more difficult to do this kind of work, because you obviously are not only talking about multidimensionality here, you're also talking about several disciplines. You're suddenly no longer just, I mean, you mentioned yourself all of those different disciplines that you're tapping into. So does that not mean that actually an individual researcher needs to have a lot more skills and a lot more knowledge in a much broader sense and a much wider sort of experience, rather than just a disciplinary sort of narrow field potentially?
Well, I think that not only it's important, I think it's sort of mandatory, or at least I welcome that complexity in my life, in my professional life. Well, it has actually helped me in my personal life as well. But what I can say for sure is that I have been seeing a difference in how I connect with people in my research or in my practice, because by reading, for example, neurobiology or social anthropology, it opens my mind, or even physics. It opens my mind to actually believe that other people are complex living systems. And so, yes, Pietro, I'm sorry, yes.
I was asking to I think that it's not a matter of 40 years. It's a matter of a lot of centuries. In the sense that the main idea we get is the ideas of Spinoza ethics. So 1610, I think, more or less. So it is from the 17th century that there is a drift inside philosophy that is a monist drift, in which ethics is considered something that is connected to practice and not something that has been preached from the transcendental world or something like this. So we are epigons, we are tiny epigons, or a current, a drift of philosophy, very important, starting from the 17th century on. And the people who saved us, these are people like Gregory Bateson, Varela, Maturin, von Foster, and also Deleuze and Guattari, that in some way recovered Bateson thoughts in a very important aspect, like the plateau ideas, that remember us that we are monists, that we are in the practice, we are what we are. We have not method, I don't know, not method. We don't have models. We don't have models that frame the people in some way, but we have to deal with intuition in the social practice or in the therapeutic practice, moment by moment, because we are inside. This is the notion of culture, of structural drift by Maturin, which is also the way in which Gianfranco says, don't fall in love with your own hypothesis, because your hypothesis is like the structural drift. When you arrive to your hypothesis, the boat is somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Well, and even if I may just add to that, the fact that we don't have necessarily to do or use linear thinking in our practice in theory goes way back to Aristotle as well, who is considered to be the father of logic. But in that philosophy, he was the one who actually said that at times we cannot conclude through input-output. We have what's called heterogenesis, meaning we have other factors, other say intuition or other context or other information that does not make us draw the hypothesis or the conclusion that we were after. So thank you, Petro, yes.
Thank you. There is somebody who's unmuted themselves, Mr. Papakristopoulos.
Yeah, just following the comment of Elena. Thanks, of course, Elena, for this enlightening presentation. You're always concrete and helpful. And following the idea of Dr. Barbeta and you, I would like to say in Greek, where I feel safe to share some notions about Greeks here. And since you well know that in Greek we have ethos and ethos, two words that represent ethics and habits. Mm-hmm. So in a way, what is called ethics in us in Greek is related to habits. What we usually do, develop our ethics. That is a very clear way to describe how these are interconnected in a way. Mm. And it's very close the way you well present these ideas. And of course, I don't know if these are depicted in the way theories work, because, you know, theories, what they visit to do is to show how things are, mm-hmm. not what things do or how things are connected. They mm-hmm. all stay simple to describe how things are. And that's a very basic misleading assumption that may lead to this discussion we're doing now.
Right.
Thank you very much. I really like that idea of developing that sort of, you know, that strand of thought a little bit further between ethics and habits. I really like that. I think I may be emailing you. Just to say, I may be emailing you. So can I just say at this stage, I'm quite aware of the time. I do want to make sure that I'm wrapping up properly. So I would like to say, Elena, first of all, thank you very, very much for spending this time with me and for me on preparing the presentation and doing the talk and being here for the discussion as well. It's really, really exciting to have you. I have seen the comments in the chat box. I will respond to those. Thank you very much. I've seen those. What I would like to kind of offer you here is a quick opportunity to have a look as to what we have next. So our next session, the Practice as Research Network, will be on the 16th of November from 2 to 3 p.m. again, Greenwich Mean Time, UK time, that is, London time. And on that one, we will be talking about ethical dilemmas in 20th century British music education history research. So you will see it's quite a different sort of discipline, but it's obviously also talking about ethical dilemmas relating to research projects that are often, you know, sort of within desk-based research, archival research, you know, and actually there are a lot of ethical dilemmas to be unpicked then. It's Dr. Ross Purvis from the University College London who will be presenting on that day. In case you're interested and want to find out a little bit more about the Practice as Research Network, here is the all of the documents and also my email address, and I have put the links into the chat box as well. Please do feel free to check us out. Again, Elena, thank you very, very much for doing this today, and I look forward to meeting all of you again in the near future.
That will be fun. Thank you very much. The pleasure was all mine.